Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into this ancient debate that honestly feels super modern. You know, the whole strong body, strong mind thing. It's a story that kicks off with a challenge, gets really interesting around the meaning of just one single word, and totally flips the script on what it means to be strong. So let's just jump right in with a question that's at the heart of this 2,500-year-old showdown. Is a strong body really enough for a strong mind? I mean, can you get totally ripped but still have a mind that just crumbles under pressure? Or what about the other way around? Can you have this incredibly disciplined mind only to have it completely knocked over by, I don't know, a bad headache? All right, so let's set the scene. Our story starts with this guy, a super famous debater named Saccaka. And you've got to picture him. He's confident, probably a little arrogant, and he rolls up to the Buddha with what he thinks is an absolute killer argument. He's like, look, there are people who only work on their body, right? And the second they feel any physical pain, boom, their mind is totally overcome. So Saccaka's entire worldview is built on this really rigid idea. Body and mind are completely separate. He sees them like two different buckets you can fill up. You spend all your time filling the body bucket, while your mind bucket stays empty. And that empty bucket, that's your weak spot. It's a really simple black and white way of looking at things. And this is his big gotcha moment. He basically points at the Buddha and his followers and lays down the accusation. He says, you guys, you're all about developing the mind, but you totally neglect the body. He's practically daring them. What happens when you get sick, when you're in pain? All that so-called mental strength is just going to crumble. He's calling them out, saying they're just a bunch of brainiacs who can't handle a paper cut. Okay, now this is where it gets really, really interesting. The Buddha's response is just brilliant. He doesn't just say, nope, you're wrong. He goes way deeper. He completely changes the game by questioning the one word at the very center of the argument, develop. What does it actually mean to develop something? So the original word in the Pali language is bhavana. Now, if you look at the first most common translation, it means something like cultivation or development. And that sounds kind of gentle, right? Like you're tending a garden. You're just helping something that's already there grow and get a little better. But here's the cool part. If we use this ancient linguistic insight, this way of looking at language called nritti, we can get to the root of the word. And the root of bhavana is bu, which means to be or to become. So suddenly, we're not just talking about improving something. The deeper meaning is to bring into being, to literally create something new. And this is the absolute key. It changes everything. See, Saccaka thinks development is like polishing a statue that's already there. But the Buddha is saying, no, no, no. It's not polishing. It's carving the statue from a raw block of stone. You are actively, powerfully bringing a whole new reality into existence. And this is how that plays out in real life. According to the Buddha, an undeveloped mind is one that gets totally hijacked by feelings. Good feeling comes along? Whoosh, it takes over. Painful feeling comes along? Same thing. You're just along for the ride. But a developed mind, one that you have brought into being, it's different. It can feel pleasure, it can feel pain, but it doesn't get hijacked. It just observes. It notices the feeling without becoming the feeling. So to prove his point, the Buddha doesn't just get into a fancy philosophical debate. Nope, he uses the most powerful evidence he's got, his own life story. He basically says, let me tell you a story. And he tells Saccaka about the years he spent pushing his body to the absolute limit, trying to develop it in the most extreme ways you can possibly imagine. He talks about his time as an extreme ascetic, practicing just brutal self-discipline. He did these breathing exercises where he'd hold his breath until the pressure in his head was so intense, it roared in his ears. He said it literally felt like someone was taking a sharp blade and just splitting his skull open, or like someone was tightening a leather strap around his head, just all-consuming pain. And then came the fasting. He cut back his food bit by bit until he was living on like a single handful of bean soup a day. This wasn't some fad diet. This was a methodical, systematic starvation of his own body. And the results were just horrifying. I mean, listen to this. His arms and legs were like knotted up reeds. You could see his spine like a string of beads. His ribs stuck out like the frame of a collapsed shed. His eyes were sunk so deep in their sockets, he said they looked like reflections at the bottom of a deep well. His scalp was all shriveled up. Just, wow. And here's the kicker to his whole story. After all of that, after pushing his body to the brink, mastering pain in a way almost no one ever has, he realized something. It was a total failure, a complete dead end. None of that agonizing practice led him to any kind of real wisdom or freedom. He had to face it. This path was a bust. So this realization just leaves him stuck, right? He's at a dead end. He's tried the path of extreme pain and it led nowhere. So his mind is just searching, looking for another way. And that's when it happens. A memory from his childhood just pops into his head. A memory that would change absolutely everything. He remembered being just a kid sitting under a rose apple tree while his dad was working. And with no effort at all, he just naturally fell into this state of deep, blissful meditation. He was secluded, peaceful, and filled with this incredible pleasure that had nothing to do with anything unskillful. And that memory just sparked this light bulb moment. For years, he'd been taught that all pleasure was bad, something to be avoided, something to be scared of. But now he asks himself this amazing question. Wait a minute, why am I afraid of a pleasure like that? A pleasure that's totally wholesome and has nothing to do with sensual desire. He realized not all pleasure is the enemy. And in that moment, he knew a starved, withered body couldn't possibly support a strong, clear mind. It just couldn't work. So he decided to eat again to regain his strength. And his 5 buddies, the other ascetics, they were disgusted. They saw him eating and basically called him a sellout, a quitter who gave up the true path for an easy life. And they just left him. He was totally alone. But he wasn't fazed. With his strength coming back, he sat down and he made a promise to himself not to get up until he'd figured it all out. And wouldn't you know it, with his body nourished and strong again, he was able to enter that same profound meditative state from when he was a kid. And this right here is the mic drop. This is the ultimate proof for his argument with Saccaka. He's deep in this meditation, and this incredibly pleasant feeling arises. But, and this is the key, he says, it did not invade my mind and stay. His mind stayed separate. It felt the pleasure, for sure, but it wasn't hijacked. That was true development. That was a mind that had been brought into being. So back to the debate. Saccaka, the great challenger, is just speechless. He looks at the Buddha who's just been through this really intense argument, and his face is bright, clear, totally unshaken. Saccaka admits it right then and there. He says any other person he debated would have gotten angry or defensive. But the Buddha? He was the living, breathing proof of everything he just said. And that brings this 2,500-year-old story right into our living rooms, doesn't it? The point is that our feelings, good ones, bad ones, all of them, they're like visitors. They just show up at your door. An undeveloped mind, well, it lets them barge right in, kick their feet up on the furniture, and basically take over the whole house. But a developed mind, it can answer the door, say hello, acknowledge the visitor, and then let them leave, while you remain the owner of your own house. So the question for all of us is, who's running the show in your mind?